Hey guys, welcome back to episode 12 of the Pity to Purpose podcast. Here I want to help you strengthen your relationship with God and to position yourself for your greater life purpose and to thrive in all that God has created you to do. I am your host, Parker Seymour, and in this week's episode, we're going to be discussing 3 truths about life purpose. So in case you missed it, last week we broke down 3 myths about purpose and what the real truths are behind them. And in this episode, I want to break down and teach 3 actual truths about purpose. So identifying my life's greater purpose was always something I kind of struggled with, mostly because I had the wrong approach. And during this current season of my life, God has been teaching me a lot about purpose and just the overall fact that we don't necessarily have to seek it to find it, but it's more something we have to position ourselves for by strengthening our walks in identity in God, which is the exact purpose of this podcast. I want to help you build a stronger walk with God so that over time you will start to walk in the higher expression of your greater purpose. So with all of that in mind, in this episode, I'm going to be sharing a little bit from personal experience just to help you get a better picture of the things I'm going to be teaching. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. The first truth about life purpose is that it addresses who you are and not what you do. What this means is that our purpose in life doesn't necessarily mean what it is we do for a living, but who we are in God. Similar to last week when we talked about how your purpose doesn't have to be a certain career. This is why it's very important to learn more about our fuller identity as sons and daughters of God, because we need to be absolutely clear on a distinction between who we are and what we do. Who I am is a son of God, set free from sin and the grave, and living free in the love and grace of Jesus Christ. Now, what I do, on the other hand, is that I help Christians strengthen their relationship with God to position themselves to walk in and thrive in their greater life purpose. So when we don't know the difference between who we are as in our identity in God and what we do, over time we confuse ourselves and we're even at risk of a future identity crisis because deep within we are lacking that solid foundation and knowing who we truly are. This is why we can see such really successful people die of suicide and just struggle with depression, because there's a good chance that they didn't know and truly understand who they were in God. So this process is a little bit slower and it takes time, but it's worth it because we build that solid foundation in God. So Matthew 7:24 through 27 says, "Therefore anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat up against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." So we need to be careful of what we wish for, even though the success that we want are good desires from God. But if we aren't rooted in God and have that strong character to handle the success, then it's all in vain and it will destroy us. So the main reason why a lot of us are not operating in our callings isn't because God has forgotten us or he's overlooking us. It's because he's waiting for us to start taking more steps and strengthening our walks in him so that we have the stronger character to handle the more that he wants to pour out into our lives. And as a quick win that you can apply to achieve this stronger sense of identity in God is you can do exactly what I did. You can Google Bible verses about identity, write them down, and each day say, "God, I am thankful that I am known by you. I am saved. I'm set free. I'm an overcomer, and I am chosen." And each day as you keep doing that, your mind will begin to be renewed, and you'll be more rooted as a child of God, and you'll be stronger. You can also check out the book of Ephesians as well. There's some things in there that you will definitely find helpful in this process. So that's it for truth number 1. The second truth about purpose we're going to discuss is that your passions and purpose are not the same thing. Now, this is a tricky one because a lot of us, I'm sure, tend to see it or tend to believe it, and we don't realize it. And so this is one that I also had to discern through as well. So the definition of passion, according to sources I found on google.com, is that 1, it's a strong and barely controlled emotion. 2, the death and suffering of Jesus. And I thought that was interesting that they added that in there as well. Now, on the other hand, purpose is 1, the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. And 2, having one's intention or objective. So passion is a strong emotion towards a certain object or activity, while purpose is what something or someone is created for. So I'm passionate about driving my car as a method of release. I'm passionate about cars and mechanics in general. And I'm also passionate about drinking coffee. So passion makes us feel good. It makes us feel happy. It's the butterflies we get when we do a certain thing. But the thing is that my purpose doesn't involve me in what I want to do. And I've been thinking about this lately. Sometime I'll have to do an episode called Your Purpose Isn't About You. Because the truth is that our purpose in life is to sacrifice and to serve other people. Look at the life of Jesus. He prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane before he went to the cross and asked God not to make him go. But because it was purpose, he went. Our greater purpose in life is going to require us to set ourselves apart for God's use for us. Passion is what I want to do. Purpose is what I was already predestined to do. It takes me completely out of the equation. What I need to do is to just trust and obey with what God has already prepared and created me for. So sure, we can be passionate about our purpose, but because passion is an emotion, we can't let it be the driving force of our faith. That is why there's a distinct difference between both passion and purpose, and I hope that brings clarity. So God created us with our purposes before we were even born. So it's important we keep this in mind as we grow in our faith. The third and final truth about our life purpose is that we don't have to quit our day jobs to operate in them. So even though how tempting it can be most times to want to quit our jobs, if it's God's purpose for us in these seasons for you to stay there at your job and learn those valuable skills, then you need to stay there, because later you're going to be able to apply those skills to whatever the next thing God calls you to do. So I still work a 9-to-5 job, and I've been actively pursuing my purpose for over a year, and it's still not paying me consistently enough to leave my job. When we position ourselves to do things the right way, or to do this the right way with God, it takes time. We're going to have to learn how to be patient and just enjoy the growth process. During the process, God is going to shed off some things from us, like old mindsets, habits, or anything that is going to get in the way of our growth to handle success. So as he sheds, God is also going to build us up. This is why it's important to stay connected with God during these seasons of pruning, because in due time, he builds us back up greater than we were before. And personally, what I've found helpful, or personally what I've found by staying and working consistently at my job through showing up each day, it has only helped me to become more consistent in other areas of my life as well, like my side business and this podcast. And the last thing is that we all have the same 168 hours a week. Do you think that if you leave your job, you'll have more time to focus on your purpose? So some of the unique changes of 2020 that occurred in my life, it was able to help me to start 2021 out with a fresh start to my life. So back in April of this year, 2021, I was working 2 jobs. I had just moved into my own apartment as a single young adult. I was building my clothing brand, and I was also starting up my YouTube channel again. And I was basically starting my life over at this point, and I still managed to dedicate time towards my calling. The point is that when we are actively walking in our purpose, still having a job isn't a bad thing. We just need to learn how to manage our time better. When we're young in our journeys, having a job gives us something to fill our time with, and it creates that level of commitment and urgency to build what God is calling us to build. And what I mean by that is if we think we're going to have more time to work on our callings, or for some people, our businesses, by quitting our jobs, we won't. You'll have more time, but that doesn't mean you're going to be more productive with that time. So when a lot of us tend to have a project to complete before a deadline, what do? We procrastinate, right? So when we still have a job, it creates more of that urgency to get things done, like I just mentioned. So in this season, don't pray away your job, because God is using it to grow you into your fuller potential. It just takes time. So as you grow over time, eventually I'm sure that whatever God is calling you to do, surely He's going to bless you in that and open up streams of income in that. So those are the 3 truths about purpose. And as a quick recap, the first one was your purpose addresses who you are and not what you do. The second one is your purpose, your passions and your purpose are not the same thing. And the last one was that you don't have to quit your day job. So with all of those in mind, what is one idea that inspired you in this episode that can help you think in a different way, and that you can apply that to your life this week to help you advance further in your relationship with God? What is one thing you can take away? So my mission with this podcast is to gear up and equip Christians to strengthen their faith and to position themselves in a place ready to walk in their fuller potential and thrive in their greater purpose. If you feel like the information I shared with you today benefited you in some way, definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already. So that is all I have for you in this week's episode. Thank you for tuning in with me to another episode. Again, I am your host, Parker Seymour. And again, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and check out the links below in the description box. And we will see you next week in another Pity to Purpose episode.